Chargers. Touchdown, UCLA.
With USC great and NFL stud, Frosty Rucker.
The Trojans back in front.
And LAFB founder Ryan Dyrud on the Believe Podcast Network and LAFBnetwork.com. This is your destination for Los Angeles football.
What is up, Los Angeles? Welcome in to another episode of the LA Football Show right here on the LA Football Network. And I'm delighted to be joined by our UCLA Bruins expert and NFL draft expert. It is Combine week, so who better to join the show than my man, Will Decker. What's up, brother? How you doing, man?
What's up, dude? So honored to come on and talk about one of my favorite things, the draft, as well as the UCLA Bruins. I mean, you can't beat this. So stoked to be here, my man.
Have you actually been on my show throughout the year?
I've been on once, and it was the recap Super Bowl week, the game itself, which was a lot of fun. Me, you, Jamal, and Skinny T were able to break down the game, which was a blast. So always thrilled to come on the Godfather and my boss's show, man. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, no. So Will, for those out there, LA football fans, you should know him well. He does the Bruin Bible, does a phenomenal job with that. And him as Jamal just launched Draft is in Session, which I just think is going to be such a good show. Already, what are you guys, 5 episodes in? 4 or 5 episodes in. And, you know, we've gotten some of the PFF guys on there. We've got, spoiler alert, Robert Mays coming on later in the season, maybe JT O'Sullivan. So this show's going to blow up. Like and subscribe to the LA Football Podcast and Network. And then check us out at Draft is in Session. Make sure you're following everything LAFB moving forward. Yeah, exactly. So obviously those listening know my show covers our 4 teams. We try to get it in-depth as possible. But if you want like true draft depth from guys that know what the hell they're talking about, Draft is in Session is where you're going to find that. And that's why Will's joining me today, because it's the Combine this week. And so we got some fun things to get into with, UCLA guys there, some USC guys there. But also just looking forward to our Rams and Chargers, like some players not at our LA schools, because I'll be honest, I don't have the knowledge yet. I haven't, Rams were in the Super Bowl, so we were super busy doing that. So I haven't truly dove into this draft class and what draft selections can help these two teams. So Will's going to help break this down to us. But real quick, Will, before we get into that, let's talk about a few of our betting partners here at the LA Football Network. We got a link down below in the description that you will click on any of those offers with, if you're in a betting state, you can go to BetMGM, you can go to FanDuel, you can go to DraftKings. They have some awesome offers there, like up to 1,000 in free bets. But if you're in California, BetUS is our partner. Will, are you a gambler at all or not really?
I love it. I gamble when I can. March Madness coming up. What better time to gamble than that? So that's going to be huge. NBA playoffs coming. So just because football season is not over, Ryan, you know how big of a basketball fan I am. I'm going to be gambling throughout the year, and I'm going to be using all these gambling ads that we have, man, because they're hitting it up with a lot of deals that could be hard to pass.
Exactly. So BetUS, we've got a 200% crypto bonus if you do Bitcoin, which actually I don't even want to get into it. As soon as not to get political here, but as soon as Russia invaded Ukraine, obviously prayers to Ukraine, that's a much bigger deal. So I don't want to make light of that situation, but Bitcoin crashed. So I was like, oh crap. So I sold all my Bitcoin and now it's on the rise again. I'm like, what am I doing? Just missed out. But if you still have it, crypto bonus on BetUS. Also 125% deposit bonus for first-time depositors. So make sure you use that link below. Like Will said, March Madness is like the most fun, other than the Super Bowl, is probably the most fun sport to bet on. But Will, Combine, Indy, we should be there, man. I'm still bummed because we were approved, the LA Football Network, to be there. Me, you, a couple guys, we're going to be on Radio Row. I got the table chart 2 days ago from the NFL about where we're going to be set up. I don't know if I've told you this yet. I don't know if you got the email or not. Maybe you did, but our table. So the Rams obviously aren't going. They announced the Les Snead and Sean McVay aren't going. They're sending their medical staff, but on Radio Row, the Chargers will be there. And our table was next to the Chargers.
You gotta be kidding me. Gosh, darn it, man. I am so freaking pissed off at this. I've got FOMO. The NFL is the ones we got to blame on this one. Had we known earlier, not the 2-week notice, kind of just throwing us under the bus after I had already come down for the Super Bowl, taking off work, we could have made this work out. And it's just such a bummer. But I do know for future combines, we are going to be tearing that thing up. and hopefully right next to the Chargers table again, because that is a great organization to get with. And Tom Telesco, to his credit, we're talking about the NFL draft. Find me a GM that's hit on the first round of the NFL draft, kind of like Telesco has in the last 5 or 6 years. We're talking the Rashawn Slaters as early as last year, the Bozas, even Mike Williams, who I think is a guaranteed re-sign, Derwin James. They just crush it every single
Justin
year.
Herbert.
So Telesco is a boss. We'll be there next year, man. That's kind of my thought process on the combine. So I'm not missing it too much, knowing that it's on the horizon.
Yeah, we will for sure. We were at Radio Row and we were like, when I talked to the NFL, I was like, okay, I think we have a good shot, but we're not, I mean, let's be real. We're a growing network, but we're not ESPN. So I was like, I don't know for sure if we'll get approved. And then, like you said, like a week after the Super Bowl, so this is middle of February, all of a sudden we get the email like, all right, you've been approved. And that gives us 2 weeks to like find flights, find accommodations. Like you said, you traveled down already to LA. So anyway, we'll be covering it remotely from our respective locations, but we can still, luckily with the way this event has changed in a sense, it's almost, you can get the same coverage remotely. You just don't get to be there with all the players and scouts and media people to hang out and have drinks afterwards. So
one of the best things about working from home is I could just throw that on the background while doing emails, just watching the combine. It's like, oh shit, George Karloftis ran like a 4.8 or something, and I'm typing out emails. It's so much fun. Combine is just one of those events that if you're a football fan, you've got to be invested, especially with your team coming around. I've seen drafts where it's taken one draft to get a team from very bad to very good. So this is very important stuff that's going on with the combine. And I'm excited to talk about some guys, man, because LA is representing. We got 10 dudes out there, I think, from both UCLA, USC.
Yeah, we do. And before we get into that, I want to ask you just generally about the combine, because like I said, I love it. It's a fun event, but it has kind of become more of a event, if you will, a fanfare event, if you will, than it has maybe value to these teams and scouts. I just want to get your thoughts. Like, what value do you think there is in the combine? Do you think there's value, or do you think it's more of a fun kind of event for the NFL to put on and for media to get to hang out? Just kind of what's your thoughts overall on the combine in 2022?
I think the value of it is more so the meetings as opposed to the exercises they're putting the guys through, because there is something to liking a prospect on tape and then meeting them in person and seeing how they interact with you, throwing plays on the playboard, getting to talk to them, their family life, their, kind of their background, what they would bring to this team, how they would fit in a certain role. That's the biggest thing for me when it comes to the combine. As for the 40 time, things like that, I think it's the most overrated event in the draft. I just saw a list today, the top 10 guys in the 40 time in the history of the combine. 9 of them were relative duds. And the other one was Chris Johnson, who had, one 2,000-yard season, maybe a couple other really productive years. But after that, he just kind of fell off the mountaintop there. So, it's overrated. Tom Brady is a perfect example of that. I think he finished last of 300. Kuiper goes and says this. There's 356 quarterbacks. He was 356 when he ranked those, and he turned out to be the greatest of all time. So, they're tests. I like the 3-cone drill. I think that's important for receivers and defensive backs because it shows how they get out of their breaks. But yeah, I mean, it's just a glorified show, if you will, and something that is more into the meetings and the personal stuff as opposed to the trials they're putting them through.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. The underwear Olympics, as they've come to be known. But I talked to Frosty actually, who went through pro days in his day and stuff like that. It's like, is there value in these drills? And are they actually showing anything to these scouts? And he said, yeah, you could really break it down to the 3-cone and get off and quickness. He's like, but more so, and this is what my opinion too, is it's more proving to these scouts and GMs like players' abilities to kind of get up for these moments. Like if they just have a horrible combine, that could be a red flag in some other area of like, well, what was their preparation like? What were they doing the night before? Did they really give a rip about this, or were they just here to be here kind of thing? Still probably overplayed, but it's more of like taking the SAT, which I don't think is really that important nowadays. I know your score shows and it helps you get into college, but SAT is probably one of the dumbest tests I've ever taken, but it's almost a show like, did you prepare? Did you give an effort? Like, I don't think it actually proves how smart you are. And the combine does that. But I do think nowadays it's more about the meetings, getting in front of the board, especially with QBs and receivers nowadays, and that intelligence factor. Because I think teams have learned a little bit too from mistakes, because we've seen in years past, Will, where the combine has affected draft stock. I mean, I remember Orlando Brown out of Oklahoma had a terrible combine and he fell like the 3rd round, and he's been a tremendous tackle in the NFL so far in his career. And then you have a guy like John Ross, who had a decent career at Washington, ran the fastest 40 time ever, and all of a sudden he gets drafted 9th overall, and he hasn't been on the football field for more than like 6 games a year. So I think teams have learned from that, and they're like, okay, this is more of the interview process. Let's, we can take some stuff from it about how guys prepared, but I'm not drafting a guy based on 40 time. At least I hope these GMs aren't doing that anymore.
Exactly. And if I were to like give a percentage wise, I think it's like 80 to 90% like character checkout. Like they want to make sure these guys are, good human beings, will be responsible, will do everything they can, and, work as hard as they can when they're given the opportunity. The other 10% is just the ability, because everyone's at this combine can play football. Let's be honest. So, I mean, it's just one of those things. Maybe if you're a guy like, one of the guys that stood out to me, I'm obviously a big 49ers fan, Vernon Davis. He was like 260 pounds, ran like a 4.4. That was one of those things where it was like, okay, like we can definitely get this guy in a system and make it work. He was a combine star, but, outside of that, you got to check all the character boxes, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Yeah. Because then you have guys, and I'm not saying character concerns, but a guy like DK Metcalf, who had a star combine also, but then he still kind of fell to the 2nd round. Everyone's like, all right, he's the number 1 guy after that 40 time. And I think now the league is putting less onus into the combine than the media still is. And so I think that's where it is today, but it's still a fun event, and it's still fun to talk about. And we've got UCLA and USC guys that I want to get into with you, Will. So let's start with your boy first, Greg Dolcich, tight end. Did you see Daniel Jeremiah now has him as his number 1 rated tight end in the draft?
I did, and it's about damn time he's getting the credit he deserves, because this guy was almost used as somewhat of a secret weapon for UCLA. He was not targeted nearly as much as he should have been. He was not implemented as much as he should have been. But go look at the big games that UCLA has played in. This guy shone brightest when the lights were on. Whether it was USC, the year he really broke out, where they almost beat USC in 2020, to this year. He had 2 big plays against USC, 2 catches for 85 yards. Go back to the LSU game, he had that 75-yard touchdown play. And I think a lot of people have discredited him due to his blocking, but from what I've seen from Ben Fennell, a guy who's been on the Draft is in Session podcast, and some of these other guys that have been reviewing tape, they're going, hey, he's a willing blocker. I think we have kind of underrated the ability he is in the blocking schemes. And I think with just more targets that Dolcich could have had, we're talking about a guy that's top of the 2nd round, easy. And, Jeremiah puts him in the top 50. He was dominant at Senior Bowl week. I think it was the best tight end among a group of, maybe not a Kyle Pitts, like a blue chip recruit tight end, but there's 6 or 7 tight ends that are going to be starting tight ends from this draft. It's a deep group. It may not have, your LeBron or, your Andrew Luck of this group, but it's got a lot of guys that can flat out ball. And for DJ to stand on a table, who's a draft expert and one of my favorites within the industry, showing that Greg is not only a top player, but the best tight end in this class, that says everything you need to know. And Dolcich finally getting his due, man. We were the conductors of this train, so it just makes me so happy that this guy is finally getting what he deserves.
The league is catching up finally. 6'4", 245, so prototypical size. Finished last year, 42 receptions, 725 yards, 5 touchdowns. Like you alluded to, could have been even more, but it was like he was used almost more like a decoy in that Chip Kelly system in some instances. So I'm a big fan of player comps, and here's why. Yes. I think the common, and I don't like saying this like I'm talking down to people, but a lot of fans, when they see player comp, they almost say like, okay, that player equals that player. I don't agree with that. I think a player comp is you're comparing some of the intangibles or the skill sets that player has, and you're not necessarily saying that they're going to be as good as that player or can be, that ceiling of that player, but they have some of that skill set. Is there an NFL tight end that you kind of liken to Greg Dolcich's game?
And I said this from the first time we did a podcast. He reminds me of another 85, and that's George Kittle. Yeah. He's a yak god. You could throw him the ball in open space. He has elite route running for tight ends, similar size. Is he the blocker George Kittle is? No, not yet. He's going to have to, kind of bulk up a little bit, maybe do some stuff in the gym with that. But in terms of just the ability to get out in the open field and make plays, Ryan, you're looking at his stats. He averaged 19 yards a catch in 2020 and 17.3 in 2021. Find me a tight end that is getting those big of plays on average in college football, period. Greg Dolcich, to me, has always stood out as a George Kittle in the receiving game. And I think he can really do that. And we're going to see a lot of that at the combine and kind of, the events that he's going to be put through.
Yeah, we'll see the finesse that he has at the combine, but he's a guy that I saw in like a Pro Football Network mock him go in the 6th round, which I just think is ludicrous. Like I think second or third is kind of the ceiling on him in the draft, in my opinion. And I think first off the board, and hey, we'll get to this later in the show, but the Chargers need a tight end. I think Greg Dolcich would be a tremendous fit for this Chargers team, have a weapon for Justin Herbert, but we'll get to that a little later. Going on down the line for UCLA, Quentin Lake, defensive back. I think this is a guy that's going to rise in the draft process. I think he had an overall pretty good career with UCLA, finished last year with 3 picks, 6 pass defended, 53 tackles. One of the more consistent players in the secondary, I think. What's your thought on Lake, and what are you kind of looking for him in order to raise his draft stock at the combine this week?
He's one of the guys I've circled from the LA schools just in general. That is, the combine will probably mean the most to him individually, because you look at him as a player, when you throw on the tape, you go, oh, that's an NFL guy. That's a top 3 or 4 round guy at the very least. What has hurt him in his career at UCLA, as most Bruins fans know, he couldn't stay healthy for a large portion of it. He missed, probably 3 of the 5 years, over 6, 7, 8 games along those lines. So, but when you throw on the tape, this guy was arguably the best defender, period, on UCLA in that secondary. He's very similar to Dolcich, where when the light shone the brightest for UCLA and they needed a play, he was the guy that stepped up the most. And take it back to SC, high pointing the interception against Keaton Slovis, 2020. LSU makes 2 huge pass breakups on one drive against Max Johnson and LSU that kept the momentum with UCLA. They forced LSU to punt. Kind of a do-it-all player. He was the Reese's senior defensive player of the week against USC this year. He had a sack and a half, an interception, a forced fumble, all over the field again against SC, the rivalry game. Doesn't get bigger than that in Los Angeles. This is a dude I love, and you couple that with the fact that he went to the Shrine Bowl and really kind of, showed who he was. He really played well, got rave reviews from all the scouts in attendance. If he can continue to raise his stock at the combine, I think it's a realistic opportunity. This guy could be a 4th or 5th round pick and a good solidified starter in the NFL within a few years. I don't think that's a crazy statement to make when it comes to Quentin Lake.
Love that. I love his ball skills and, his work ethic and stuff like that. Stuff you can't necessarily teach, athleticism. So it'll be fun to see the chatter he gets at the combine here. DBs, I think, do skills like the last day of I think like Sunday or something. So we won't see him till later in the week, really, but should be a fun one to watch. Next up, defensive line, T2 Ogbonia. Big dude, 6'4", 320, just a hog in the middle. I think he had 27 total tackles on the year. I think he's an interesting prospect to look at. I think he had a good season. I think I was hoping he was going to come back for another year for UCLA, but did declare for the draft, which, obviously is maybe the best for him in terms of, making money now and whatnot. Last year, also Diggy Zuwa was the defensive lineman to go into the draft. Ended up getting taken by the Cowboys and had a phenomenal rookie season. I think he was relatively unknown going into the draft, especially because there was no combine, and he took the league by storm, had a great year. Do you think Ogbonia has similar ability, or I know he's a different player. He doesn't have the speed that Osa had. He's a bigger bodied guy, but what's your thoughts on Ogbonia and what he can do this week?
Ogbonia is impressive. And, I do think he's an NFL caliber defensive tackle. I would be probably looking at 5th, maybe 6th round for a guy like Ogbonia. But when you go back and throw on the Senior Bowl tape, this guy was as dominant as any defensive tackle, not named Travis Jones, when it came out there. He absolutely dismantled some of these guys in one-on-ones. You can check out the Twitter, feed with that. He was sensational. Don't look at the stats when it comes to defensive tackle and nose tackle players, because it's very few situational, opportunities. I do think that's why he's a 5th or 6th rounder, because you can only use him in certain packages. But in terms of being a nose tackle, he's an NFL caliber player. And this guy's a former shot put champion in the state of Texas, and at the highest division there, 66-foot shot put that he was able to do. So watch out for the bench press. I think he's going to be, doing what he does there. But Ogbonia is a guy that I like as a later round pick for some of these teams, especially the Chargers, if they wait till the very end, because they do need a new nose tackle. Maybe not address in the early rounds, but if you're looking for one at the end, why not Ogbonia? Local kid and can play his ass off. So I really like him.
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of reminds me of a guy the Rams drafted a few years ago, ended up being great this year, Greg Gaines out of Washington. They got him in the 4th round. Similar kind of stat line, but Ogbonia is bigger. I mean, he's 3 inches taller, 10 to 15 pounds bigger. So I think he really could be a good NFL prospect. It'll be, like you said, the big guys, the combine's about, the bench and stuff like that. And maybe some agility drills to see how they move if they're, in the muddle of the trenches. So speaking of big guys, another big human being, Sean Ryan, offensive lineman, offensive tackle, 6'5", 320. This is a guy coming into the year I thought could be a first-round selection. Do you still think that's a chance? And how can he solidify that this week?
Yeah, he's top 60 ranked in PFF, and he's a true junior. I think a lot of people forget that. He was not invited to, the Shrine Bowls or the Senior Bowls because he was younger than most. But the thing that I love about him is production, and it's going to be hard-pressed to find a better pass blocking big. This guy had 1,100 career pass blocking opportunities. He only allowed 2 sacks in that amount of time. He has just been a solidified force from the day he stepped on foot on Westwood. He's been
as a true freshman.
As a true freshman left tackle going against edge rushers. Pac-12 has the 3rd most, players invited to the combine this year. So, I mean, he's playing against very top-notch competition in the Power 5. Sean Ryan, I mean, that's another guy I circled. Quentin Lake is a guy who, is going to value the combine. Sean Ryan as well, because this is his first real opportunity to show, I can do this at the highest level. And, if he does ball out at the combine, could sneak back into that first round role, because you're looking for experience, you're looking for reps, and you're looking for a guy that performs, at a very high level. And Sean Ryan checks all of those boxes. So I think he's a guy that I'm really looking forward to watching what the results are this week from him, because his stock can soar with a great week in Indy.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think he's a definite first round talent. I think his floor is 2nd round. I think he'll, no matter what, be gone by the 2nd round on an NFL team. And do you think, again, it's so hard. I think it's just depending on what the team needs, but do you think he'll play left tackle, or could we see him move over to right?
I've heard even guard. People want to slide him in at guard. I don't necessarily believe that. The comp that NFL.com gave was maybe he could slide into right tackle, but I don't know, man. Sean Ryan was so good as a left tackle, and it's hard for me not seeing that translate, because you watch some of the one-on-one reps he did with Kayvon Thibodeau. I mean, that's a top 5 pick any way you spin it in this draft. And he was holding his own for a lot of that game. He was, giving hell to Kayvon Thibodeau, who's a phenomenal player in his own right. So if that's as close as you're going to get to NFL talent, and evaluating how he'll project to the next level, give me Sean Ryan as at least a depth left tackle if he's not your starting left tackle. And, we're talking about the Rams. Whitworth's getting up there. He may retire, may not. This guy, maybe he's not available in that 3rd round, but you could listen. Les Snead has said F them picks for quite a while now. Package that 3rd and 4th, go up and get Sean Ryan. This guy is from the LA area. You want to get more fans involved with LA, get the local kid. That's where I look at it. And you can do that with a guy like Sean Ryan.
Oh yeah. If Whitworth retires and they're unable to re-sign Joe Noteboom, I mean, they are a glaring hole there with no one on the roster really other than Alaric Jackson at the left tackle. So it would make a lot of sense to try to move up to get him potentially. All right. Last one for UCLA. This is my favorite player for UCLA. I mean, I love me some Greg Dolcich, but I'm a huge Kyle Phillips guy. Such a productive career. Again, I think he was also could have had better stats if used differently, but was kind of turned on at the end of the year, but a lot at the beginning of the season and even last year was really just not used that much in this offense. And I mean that lightly, because he was used in the sense of he was out there for every snap, just didn't necessarily get the ball come his way. But this year finished with, 59 receptions, almost 800 yards, 10 touchdowns. Also used in the punt and kick return game, had a punt return against, was it Colorado? I believe there was just a fascinating punt return to watch. And, I think he projects as a really good slot receiver. I've comped him to the likes of Cooper Kupp in a sense. he's smaller. Cooper Kupp is 6'2". Kyle Phillips is about 5'11", so a couple inches smaller. But just the way he runs routes, his hands, the tenacity he plays with, I liken him to that a little bit. So what's your thoughts on Phillips, and what can he do to really, because he had a phenomenal Shrine Bowl, but what can he do to raise his stock this week also?
A dude's dude, Ryan. And, to kind of piggyback off your punt return comments, this guy averaged over 20 yards of punt return for his career at UCLA. That is it's one of those stats you got to stop what you're reading and just go, did I read that correctly? I got to go back and evaluate everything. Yeah. Kyle Phillips is the man, and we knew he was great. I mean, he led UCLA in catches 3 years straight. This year kind of emphasized how good of a player he was, whether it was that Stanford game where he literally would not let UCLA lose. Mm-hmm. They get dragged back into the game. Stanford makes some plays. Kyle Phillips catches a pass 75 yards over the middle, touchdown. He was like, I got this, guys. Don't worry. He had 2 touchdowns in that game, 2 touchdowns against SC. Really, tenacious slot guy. And then you couple that. You mentioned the Shrine Bowl. He was the MVP of the entire week for the Shrine Bowl at a lot of these, publications and websites. So when you add up that we know, Phillips has the hands and everything and then you add it to the one-on-one reps we were able to see him play in the game, Kyle Phillips' stock has maybe risen as much as any player for UCLA or USC in these past few months. And if he can continue to build on that, I think I have him as the number 2 slot receiver in this entire draft behind a guy like Sky Moore. Mm-hmm. And boy, you could see maybe even the top of the 3rd round if he is able to continue to ball out. And, I think a lot of people would agree that it's probably a fair position for him. Hey, Cooper Kupp was a 3rd round pick. I mean, we can keep on doing this. So Kyle Phillips, that's a guy's guy right there. And one of our favorites at LAFB. I'm excited to see what he does in Indy, and can only continue to raise his stock. Will just be an incredible player to watch.
Yeah, he's a guy that, like we said at the beginning of the show, I think these are way overplayed, these skill sets or whatever, or these skill drills. But he is a guy, I think if he does run a good 40 time, I think that will help his draft stock. The tape's out there. We see what he does, but if he can come in the 4.4s, I think everyone will go, oh, wow, this is a 3rd round talent, because A, he has the speed to do it from the slot, but B, we can plug him in as a full-time kick and punt returner, which a team like the Chargers or the Rams could desperately use. And if he's there for I know Rams don't need skill positions at the moment, especially if they re-sign OBJ, but if he's still there in the 3rd and the Chargers haven't taken him, he could be a great fit for this Rams team also.
The Chargers comp actually makes a lot of sense, because on paper, let's say they do bring back Mike Williams. They got the 2 outside threats. Yeah. I know Keenan plays in the slot a lot, but he is so explosive. He's not your typical slot guy. With a guy like Kyle Phillips, just to kind of the chain mover, so to speak, your Julian Edelmans, your Hunter Renfrows. Herbert needs that kind of, just underneath guy that can make plays for him. You add that to that receiving core and what we know Kyle Phillips can do, that would be a home run pick for the Chargers. And I would be all over that if they were able to, acquire a guy like that. So, hey, hopefully Kyle Phillips goes to the Bolts, man.
Yeah, we'll see. So this is a good UCLA class. That's a good 5 guys representing that I think all will be drafted and all, probably in the top 5 rounds potentially. What's more important than peace of mind? Probably nothing. That's what NordVPN is here for, to give you peace of mind while you're online. And with all the threats that you face today on the internet, it's more important than ever to have the best VPN you can get. NordVPN is the best VPN service, offering the fastest connectivity, the most servers, and the next-gen encryption to make sure that everything you do online stays secure. So grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to NordVPN. That's NordVPN.com/believe, or use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to get up to 70%. That's right, 70% off your NordVPN plan, plus 1 additional month free. It's also risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Once again, that's NordVPN.com/believe, or use the promo code BELIEVE to lock in your offer. Let's move to USC. I won't drill you too much on USC because I know you cover UCLA, but you know football and stuff anyway. So Keonta Ingram, running back, was from a transfer from Texas. What's funny about Keonta Ingram, because of how just bad USC was this year, and the offense basically ran through Drake London, which we'll get to him in a second, who is like my darling of this entire draft.
Yeah.
But Keonta Ingram finished with 911 yards rushing, almost still eclipsed 1,000 yards rushing. Had 5 touchdowns, but the biggest stat, averaged 5.8 yards per carry. So this is a running back that I think didn't get a lot of love all year, but potentially could be a pretty solid draft prospect and could raise some eyebrows at the combine this year, especially with the size he has, 6 foot 215. What do you know about Keonta Ingram, if anything, and how excited are you to kind of watch him this week?
I know a little bit about him because Madman and I kind of went in depth on him on the Shrine Bowl standouts. And he was one of the guys that was getting rave reviews, during the week, during practice. I like that he hasn't had a ton of carries throughout his career too, dating back to Texas. A lot of this goes back to tread on the tires. Like Breece Hall is, one of the top running backs in the class. Breece Hall has maybe 2 to even 3 times the amount of carries that Keonta Ingram has had in his career. So you're getting a guy that still has a lot of, tread on the tires, so to speak. He's a great pass catcher. He had over 23, 24 catches this past year. You had the explosive burst of 5.8 yards a carry for an offense that was relatively pretty bad for what USC should have been. I like him. I don't know if he's worthy of a top 5 round pick, but if I'm there at the end of the draft and I'm specifically a team like the Chargers, hell, maybe even the Rams, seeing what happened with, Darius, it's Henderson, right? Darius Henderson, the running back.
Darrell Henderson, yeah.
Darrell Henderson, yes. Darrell Henderson for the Rams. Kind of a guy that's fallen off a little bit. Sony Michel, who knows if that's going to last more. Depth running back, you got to get at least 3 or 4 guys moving forward. I like Ingram, and I think if he's on the board at the 6th, 7th round, that's a guy I'm looking at in the running back room.
Yeah, I love him for both teams because both teams do need depth at that position. Chargers, Justin Jackson's a free agent. He's had injury concerns, so we'll see if he comes back. And the Rams, like you said, Sony Michel's a free agent. I don't see them paying him. And Henderson and Akers just haven't really stayed healthy. So, and they're not going to go pay for one in free agency. I think the draft is where they'll get one late. I'll just pair these 2 guys together in the defensive backfield. You got Chris Steele, defensive back, kind of an up and down career. If we're being honest, I think they're really good first 2 years. This year had some really good moments and then had other moments that was a little just inconsistent, but the talent is there. And especially if he gets in the right system, finished with 33 tackles, 2 interceptions. And then you have Isaac Taylor Stewart, also a solid big body corner. I think they can play very well on the outside. 39 tackles, had the 1 interception. So 2 guys, it was just, I think the talent's there. It was just hard because USC's defense was just so bad last year. And how much do we know of that was scheme, coaching versus talent? Because I think coming into the year, the defensive backfield was seen as one of the strengths of this defense with Chris Steele and with Stewart and with Isaiah Pelomau as well. They were seen as like a really strong unit, and I don't think they just all of a sudden lost their talent. I think there's a number of factors that went into it, and I love, obviously, I'm a glass half full guy, like propping these guys up. But what do you know about those 2 guys, and do you think they do have, NFL caliber talent?
I think both of them do, and it's not going to be, the high draft picks that we are used to seeing with a team like SC. Chris Steele is a guy that we had Ben Fennell come on, and we asked him who his favorite USC prospect was, expecting to hear Drake London. It was, Chris Steele. Wow. Chris Steele was his favorite guy. I think Chris Steele has a big time opportunity here at the combine to really show what he's worth. I think he's a nickel corner, someone you could plug in as that third cornerback with the wide receivers split out wide. But I really like what his opportunity is. He's played well in big games, was a high level recruit coming out of St. John's Bosco, went to Florida, then transferred back to SC. His stock dropped a little bit this year, but still worthy of a 4th or 5th round pick, in my eyes, if you are quarterback needy and are looking for that guy to kind of, shore up the concerns in the secondary. When it comes to Isaiah Tyler Stewart, fast guy on the outside. I believe he ran a 4.32 before coming into high school. This is a guy that could have a great combine for a career that I feel like underwhelmed a lot of USC fans as, high profile recruit he was coming in. If he can, check those boxes of running a great 40 time once again, like he did in high school, 3-cone drill, vertical, all those boxes, that could be a guy that could get drafted as well. But Chris Steele is my favorite of the 2 in the secondary.
Funny Chris Steele story. I gotta shout it out. One of our podcasts, I can't remember which one, but was talking about the USC UCLA game, and someone mentioned DTR hurdling Chris Steele. And shout out Chris, hit us up on Instagram very respectfully, by the way. But like,
Great
hey,
guy.
yeah, just so you know, that wasn't me that got hurdled. I couldn't live with that if that was me that got hurdled. But yeah, I just love that he was tuning into the show. So shout out Chris Steele if you're listening right now. And we hope the best and kill it this week at the combine. I just thought that was so funny.
Yeah, shout out Chris Steele. He handled it like a true pro. That's how I know he's going to be able to go to the next level with ease, man. So
he's good on those interview rooms at the combine, those tough questions.
Exactly.
All right, so let's finish with the two Drakes. We'll start with Drake London, and then we'll end with Drake Jackson. Drake London, I don't think we need to say too much about him. He's not going to run anything. Obviously, he's still nursing that ankle injury that he broke, but he should be good to go by training camp, I would assume, since it's a bone break, not a ligament tear or anything like that. But I've said it so many times in the show, so I'll just turn it over to you. But I think he's my number one receiver in this draft, and that's with a lot of good receiving talent. So that's no disrespect to any of the other guys, but I just think his ability to go up and get the ball, to catch it anywhere on the field, and then take it anywhere he wants to be able to run through people, but still have 4.48, speed. I just think he brings so much to the table. Reminds me of Brandon Marshall back in his days at UCF, and then with the Denver Broncos. That was kind of my player comp. So
great one too. Yeah.
Don't know how much he can really raise his stock at the combine, other than he'll be in the meetings, obviously. But what's your thoughts on Drake London overall in this draft and in this combine?
He is unbelievable, and he is one of the greater talents we've seen in the USC room with guys like Robert Woods, Marquise Lee, Nelson Aguilar, guys that have just been playing there for a long time. In terms of an overall prospect, he's the best receiver I've seen probably since Mike Williams back in the early 2000s for USC. Just throw on the tape. I mean, it's as dominant as you can imagine. Whole defense knows where the ball's going. They'll double team him, triple team him.
Yeah.
Just goes over the top, high points to football, brings it in, first down USC over and over again. So he's the best receiver in the draft for my money, and someone that I really feel like is going to be an easy transition to the next level. We'll probably be hearing about Drake London in fantasy football and, doing touchdown dances as early as next year. So I'm really pumped for our guy, Drake London. Get out there, and he probably should wait for the pro day, to be honest. I think that's a good opportunity for him to, make sure his times are right, because speed is going to be the thing that they're looking at with him, right or wrong, because he's a big bodied receiver. If you can get those 3-cone drills down and that 40 time in the 4.5, 4.4 range, he's going to be just the prospect we know him to be, a top 20 pick in the overall draft. So Drake London, absolute stud.
Yeah. And I may have misspoke. I honestly didn't even look it up. I just assumed because he broke his ankle in October. He's not participating in drills, is he? Or have you heard differently?
Don't believe so. I think he dropped out. I know Evan Neal dropped out, a couple other guys, big stature when it comes to the NFL draft. So he's rightfully, taking his time with that. And it's going to be interesting to see when he does come back.
Yeah, I didn't even look, because I just assumed. I'm like, he broke his ankle in October. There's no way he's running drills in March 2nd or 3rd. But if he is out there, then I was wrong. But either way, he's my top receiver. Will, I have 2 first-round picks in my dynasty draft this year. I have 3rd overall and 9th overall. So, I mean, he's a guy I'm definitely targeting. Hopefully no one in my league is listening to the show. But they know I always draft USC guys and UCLA guys when they come to me. So, but he's a guy I definitely want, because I think he's going to be that good that early. I think he's going to be dominant from a rookie season. I've said this before on my show, Will. I'm curious your thoughts, and then we'll move on. But his freshman year, the USC wide receiver room, because he came in with Keaton Slovis. The freshman year, you had Michael Pittman Jr., you had Amon-Ra St. Brown, and you had Tyler Vaughns. 3 studs. And when you watch them all 4 out there on the field, specifically in that UCLA game where USC put up like 50-something points, Drake London was far and away the most talented one out of all 4 of them. And you had Pittman go in the 2nd round, Amon-Ra go in the 4th. Vaughns, I don't think got drafted, but he was on some practice squad. And Drake London was a freshman at the time, and you could just see it then how good this dude was going to be. And now here he is entering the draft. So I'm excited to see his career play out.
And I watch the Momentum podcast, Mo Hassan, the quarterback, who was talking to Keaton Slovis, and Slovis was kind of the quarterback that was thrown in with all those receivers there as a young quarterback. Mm-hmm. And they were talking about the group, and it's, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who is going to be a player that could make the Pro Bowl next year. He's my receiver that's really going to jump off next year. Michael Pittman's an absolute stud in Indy. He's great. Tyler Vaughns, NFL player. I think he is on the Colts still. But when they were talking about Drake London, to your point, They go, we all knew Drake was going to be the most talented of them all. And that's coming from guys that are like absolutely balling on Sundays, not rotational players, like really, really good wide receivers. So
like number one receivers on their teams as rookies.
It's crazy, man. And Drake London just has that ability, the ball skills from basketball that he's able to kind of use on the football field is really awesome. And, he's mossing just about everybody. So I'm excited to see how that translates to the next level. I think it's going to be very similar to what we saw at SC, but Drake London, man, that guy's an all-timer when it comes to SC football. And that's saying a lot given the wide receivers they've had there.
Yeah. And I think the last thing I'll say about him, I think he is there's a lot of receivers that are A, scheme dependent and B, quarterback dependent. I think he's scheme proof and quarterback proof. I don't think it matters who's out there because he can literally, we saw it at SC last year, literally go run a 10-yard dig and just have whoever's back there, whether it's Dart or Slovis, just throw it up with 3 guys and go make a play. And he'll come down with 13 catches and 210 yards. So I think it's just going to be fun to watch. So Will, the last USC guy we'll talk about, and then we'll quickly talk about position needs for Rams and Chargers and who to look for outside of the LA schools. Drake Jackson, this is a guy that has gotten forgotten. Coming into this year, was projected as a potential first-round pick, I think. The size is there, 6'4", 250. The speed, the pass rush moves. Didn't have a outstanding season last year in terms of stats, but still finished with 37 tackles, 5 sacks, and 8 tackles for loss. I'm not comparing the two because obviously one is better than the other, but Kayvon Thibodeau, who is, for some people's money, the best overall prospect, but I don't think anyone would argue top 10 overall prospect, is an inch taller, the same weight, and finished with 2.5 more sacks. So, I mean, it wasn't even like he blew Drake Jackson out of the water. And Jackson plays the same role, the same position, has the same size, the same speed. This is a guy I think that's not getting talked a lot and could come out in this combine and remind people like, oh yeah, there's another Drake at USC that could potentially be at the end of the first round or for sure the second round. What's your thoughts on Drake Jackson?
Drake Jackson's explosive. He's a disruptor. He makes big plays, and he's a very good prospect. But to his detriment, this is arguably the deepest edge class I've ever seen as a draft fan. And we're going to get into some of those guys coming up in just a second when it comes to needs for the Chargers, maybe even the Rams too, if they're looking for that. But, I mean, you look at the numbers, high win percentage rate when it came to PFF. This is a guy that continually made plays when he in one-on-one matchups, double teamed. He was kind of the lone, edge defender that you really had to prepare for with USC. 5 sacks this year, really stood out as a freshman, 5.5 sacks that year. Situational pass rusher, looks great. And spoiler, I think he'd be an excellent fit with the Rams, especially if Von Miller is on the move there. You're going to have to replace that guy somehow. I think with all these, edge defenders, there's like 8 or 9 guys at the top of that list. He's unfortunately fallen behind there. Yeah. And that could be a beautiful thing for the Rams because they've been able to see him in person as much as anyone being in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And you can, they got a 3rd-round pick this year, maybe even slips to the 4th round, depending on how he does in the, combine. But if you're able to get a Drake Jackson at that point of the draft, when it was kind of, talked about that he was going to be a 1st or 2nd-round pick, that's a hell of a move there for Drake Jackson. So Rams, keep your eyes on him, but Drake Jackson has the tools and the ability to be a difference maker at the next level. No doubt about it.
One of the newest sponsors of the LA Football Show is Athletic Greens. Tons of people, a lot of people take multivitamins, but it's important to choose one that is top quality. With one delicious scoop of Athletic Greens, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens. I don't think I'm saying that right, but something healthy to start your day right. Their special blend of ingredients support gut health, nervous system, immune system, energy recovery, focus, and aging. Reclaim your health and arm your immune system, so important nowadays with all the stuff going around, with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/believe. That's BLEAV. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/believe. These statements do not have have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. These products are not intended for diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Athletic Greens, take ownership of your health. Oh, if he falls to the third or fourth, that's a slam dunk for the Rams. And yeah, I think that'd be a great move. So that segue is perfect. Let's stick with the Rams. The position needs I have, and this is kind of based the last few episodes. Will, you obviously don't know this, but I did a deep dive in free agency. Who I basically broke down exactly who they're going to bring back, because I'm a fortune teller. I'm telling it like it is. Who they're paying back, who they're allocating money to. So based on that, that's why I did these needs. Because obviously we won't know until free agency is done, but I'm doing it based on that. So I have them with offensive line needs. They got a lot of free agents there, with Big Whit potentially retiring, and just depth in general. Inside linebacker, that was probably their weakest point overall in general in the defense. Ernest Jones, they drafted last year, came on as a really good starter, but did miss some games for injury. Troy Reader was very up and down, and he's going to be a free agent. Traven Howard also going to be a free agent. So regardless, they need depth there. Cornerback, Darius Williams, a free agent, expected to potentially get big money, which the Rams just don't have. If they can get him back for cheaper, I expect him to be back, but that's a position need. And running back. So I don't know what you want to start with. If you want to go position by position, if you want to just throw out some players, up to you. But if you want, let's start with offensive line, if that sounds good to you, and maybe give you some offensive line, or however you want to segue it to who you want to talk about.
That sounds great, man. And I've got two guys that really stand out at the O-line position for the Rams and for the Chargers, for that matter, too. Kellen Diesch. This is a guy that is Pac-12's PFF's highest rated tackle the past few years. And it's a guy that I don't think is getting his just due when it comes to the NFL draft. I mean, 6'7", 299-pound tackle, moves very nicely off the edge. Great footwork, all of that. And has been tasked with blocking the best edge defender for Arizona State for the last 2 seasons, has done more than his part, has really done an exceptional job at the position. And you take that, he went to the Shrine Bowl. He had a near perfect week. I think he lost 1 rep in one-on-ones when it came to the Shrine Bowl. So he came in as the top-rated player to the Shrine Bowl, and boy, did he deliver at the tackle position. I just think this is a guy that, if he's there in the 3rd round, it's almost too good to be true for a team like the Rams, especially if they are losing a Whitworth and a new Note Boom. So if you can get a Kellen Diesch, I think that's a great pick. The other guy that I got is a Jamari Salyer. And this guy, you know, I looked at the tape. This guy is so underrated. A lot of people are projecting him to as a guard to the next level, but was the left tackle for this Georgia National Championship team. And when you look at the edge defenders and defenses this guy was playing, he played Michigan, held his own against Aiden Hutchinson, did as good a job as you can ask for. Alabama, you know, went against them, did a hell of a job against them. Clemson did a great job against them too. He shows up on tape in a lot of ways, and he allowed 0 sacks last year in that position for, you know, arguably the most competitive league in, not even arguably, the most competitive league in college football. So Jamari Salyer is a guy that I'm looking at. If you want him as a guard, he can play that. If you want him at tackle, he can play that. Regardless of what position he plays at the next level, these coaches are looking for versatility at the end of the day. They want players that can play multiple positions on the line. Salyer can give you that right off the bat, and you can plug him into different spots, and he'll make a difference instantly. So Salyer and Diesch are the 2 linemen that I think for both the Rams and the Chargers could make a huge difference, you know, for their 2022 season.
Yeah, no, I love both those. I think those would be great fits. Could start if needed, but also be depth if they need that. I'm going to put you on the spot before I move positions, so I apologize if you're unprepared, but the center position for the Rams is one that always gets talked about a lot. They went all in on Brian Allen last year after, you know, moving back over Corbett to guard in the middle of training camp, which was a huge storyline. I thought Allen played pretty good this year. I know he had a couple ups and downs. I think there was a lot of malcontent from fans because the Rams passed on Creed Humphrey last year, so there was a thought of what could have been. But overall, Brian Allen, I think, was a very good center. However, he is also a free agent, and he is also probably going to command between $4 and $5 million. So if the Rams get outbid or cannot afford him, they will have a huge gaping hole at center. So are there any centers, again, putting you in the spot, I apologize, but any centers potentially that you could see them able to get in the 3rd round that could have a good impact? Guys like last year, Quinn Miners, who was kind of the darling that went in that 3rd round range.
Phenomenal player.
So someone like, is there anyone like that? Not necessarily him, but just in that 3rd round, 4th round range that could be an impact player?
And the good thing with centers, if the Rams were to lose a guy like Brian Allen, that is a position that typically goes in the third round at highest. Linderbaum is an exception to the rule this year, the Iowa center. Yeah. This guy is one of the safest picks in the draft. A lot of people are calling him the next Jason Kelsey at that level. But the guy that I've circled, and listen, I went to Arizona State. I promise you I'm not hyping the football program. They're in shambles right now. Donovan West is the number 2 ranked center when it comes to PFF. And I think that third round target area is where he will likely be picked. Donovan West on tape is an absolute bruiser in the run game, and he commands the offensive line in a very respectable rate. Had the second highest PFF pass grade when it came to centers this year, only behind Linderbaum, who is, the guy by far and away. So if Donovan West was available to the Rams and they do lose Brian Allen, that's a no-brainer pick. I think he's a guy that can come in, start right away, and give them a serviceable enough center that they're not really missing Allen that much.
Love it. Yeah, I think that'd be a great fit. So good job with that. And I think the Rams need to take a center regardless, even if they bring Allen back just for depth. And depending on what the contract is, maybe it's a 1 or 2 year deal. I mean, maybe it is a 5-year deal, but I think they need to add some depth there anyway, just in case, because Coleman Shelton, their depth guy, guess what? Also a free agent. So a lot of stuff going on in the offensive line for the Rams. And if they want to run it back, they need to have that depth there. Moving to backer, you mentioned some edge guys, which you can talk with them too if you want, because we'll see if they're able to bring back Von Miller, Obo Okoronkwo, also a free agent. But you have Justin Hollins, you have Leonard Floyd, you have Terrell Lewis, you have some other pieces there. So I don't think that's as big as a need as inside backer, but the backer in general is a need. So we'll toss to you some guys you think could be, again, available in that third to fourth round range, since we're not going in 1 and 2.
Yeah, and I'll save the edge guys and the interior D linemen for the Chargers, because I think that's the team that needs it more so than the Rams. Yep. But when it comes to linebacker, I've got 2 names that stood out. Anyone that watched the Draft is in Session podcast knows I'm very high on these guys. Number 1 is Chad Mumma, 6'3", 242-pound linebacker from Wyoming. You look at the stats, it just checks out. This guy had 142 tackles, 82 solo. And he was the highest graded linebacker for the G5. And what I learned about the G5 is it's not the Power 5, but it's, the American Conference, the Conference USA, the MAC, the Sun Belt, things like that. He was the highest graded linebacker for that. And he's at 242 pounds. This guy can freaking move, dude. He took 3 interceptions, 2 of which he took to the house. He's got safety-like speed at 242 pounds, 6'3", for Wyoming. He was the leader of that defense, calling plays. And what I told the Madman on our show, normally I'd be kind of skeptical on some of these guys. Obviously, Josh Allen came out of Wyoming. He has had a big career, but I'm a little bit more skeptical on those dudes. Aaron Bull, the linebacker coach for Wyoming, put Logan Wilson, an almost identical player, in the NFL for the Cincinnati Bengals, who was a starting linebacker. Very similar production, had close to 100 tackles this year, 4 interceptions at the linebacking position. I don't know what they're doing with these hands, for these linebackers out there.
They're ranking cattle or something.
Ball hawks, man. It's crazy. So Mumma is my guy. He might be my favorite prospect in the underrated category, period. And then the other guy, Madman came out a bunch of times and kind of slandered the Rams, saying they were a soft team. They need a little bit more of, a hitter out there outside of your Aaron Donald and your Ramsey. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that point, but what I will say is if they are looking for that type of player, look no further. Leo Chenal, 261-pound linebacker at 6'2", 260 pounds. Yeah. And he is, projected to maybe run in the 4.6s when it comes to the combine at 261.
That's bigger than Kayvon Thibodeau, for those that are wondering.
Yeah, literally physical freak. 95 tackles, 8 sacks. This guy is the ultimate downhill linebacker. You need him on a stop, 3rd and short, 4th and 1, they're going for it. This is the guy I want on the field as a linebacker. And Wisconsin, great defensive lineage there from the linebackers. They do an excellent job of coaching those players up. Leo Chenal is a second-team All-American. He's not getting the just due he deserves. If the Rams are looking for a linebacker in the 3rd, maybe he gets to the 4th round. This is a guy I look at and go, come on, get Leo Chenal, get Chad Mumma. Those are home run picks for the Rams if they were to look in the linebacker.
I love them both. Chad Mumma, I absolutely love. I love that you said that name. Like I said, I don't know a ton of these prospects, but I do know him. And with what
Mumma's
the
a stud.
Rams need, I think pairing him with Ernest Jones is such a
Ooh.
perfect pairing because Mumma can go more side of the sideline, can, maybe a little better in coverage. Ernest Jones is your gap filler, your GPS to the football. I think they would just complement each other so well in that Raheem Morris system. So that's a slam dunk if he's there. Cornerback, well, couple corners. Again, it's hingent on if they're able to bring back Darius Williams or not. But if they drafted Robert Rochelle last year, who they like a lot out of, small Alabama school, and they're liking his ability to improve this offseason and hopefully become a true starter next year. So I wouldn't expect the Rams to go corner till later in the draft. But who are some guys maybe you're keeping your eye on at the combine? That is.
Yeah, there's definitely a few guys, and I've got two guys that will probably be available in that 3rd and 4th round, and a guy that's probably available in that 5th and 6th round. The one guy that really stood out to me, and maybe there's a chance he's there in the 3rd round. He may move up because he's such a physical freak, but such a raw prospect to begin with. Tariq Wallen. Have you heard of this guy from University of Texas, San Antonio? I looked at the measurables and I was blown away by what I saw. He's 6'4", 205 pounds, but they're throwing it out there this week that this guy is going to be challenging for the 40-second dash, record. Like they say this guy has a chance to do this at 6'4", 205 pounds, a converted receiver to defensive back. He didn't play defensive back till his junior year in college. Very raw, needs the coaching, but a guy that stood out the Senior Bowl was, more than holding his own against all NFL talent. It's up in the air if he will be available in that 3rd round. I think a lot of teams are going to shy away from him due to how raw of a player he is. It may take a year or two to get there. But if Wallen could reach his ceiling, boy, this guy could be a potential shutdown corner in the NFL. Other guy I got, it's the Jim Thorpe Award winner, Kobe Bryant. And LA, what more do we like more than Kobe Bryant? Let's get the other guy out there. Was the other corner to Sauce Gardner on Cincinnati's, historic team that made the college football playoff. Double-digit interceptions for his career, 4 interceptions this year. Checked all the boxes when it came to the PFF grades in terms of how he was guarding receivers. Held his own against Alabama in that game. I think he did a really good job guarding, some of the talented receivers they had, whether it was Jamison Williams or one of the younger talent at the receiving position. Kobe Bryant's a guy that you look at the resume, you look at what he was able to do, did his thing in the Senior Bowl practice week. That's a guy that's going to be in the 3rd round, 4th round. If you really need to address it, and Darius Williams, it's unlikely, but does move on, that's a guy I'm circling going, hey, let's get Kobe Bryant in here. He could be maybe a starter right away. And the last guy I have, it's former USC guy, Jack Jones, from Long Beach. Went to Long Beach Poly.
Yeah.
This dude, just a solid starter throughout his career, and a lot of high highs, a lot of low lows there. But if you could just find a balance, I mean, this guy, double-digit career interceptions. And what I love this year, 4 interceptions, 4 forced fumbles. He's really nailed that peanut punch when it comes to the cornerback position. This is a guy that, high risk or a low risk, high reward type of situation when it comes to the draft. So if you can get one of those 3 corners moving on from Darius Williams, I think that's ideal for a team like the Rams. So check those guys out.
Yeah, I think all 3 of those are worth watching this week at the combine to see what they do in their DB drills and if there's any interviews. And we'll keep everyone out there posted on who the Rams and Chargers talk to also as those become public, because I think that's important to see who they actually speak with. And yeah, what better fit than Kobe Bryant in LA?
Come on, man. Yeah, that's such a home run. That's such a home run.
And with the beauty with the Rams, you have Jalen Ramsey. So you're not looking for your next lockdown corner. You just need some compliment guys, some guys that can compliment Jalen and do stuff good on the outside or in the nickel, in the slot. All right, last need for the Rams. I think it's running back. Like we said, Cam Akers, injured all last year, didn't have the greatest of playoffs. Dale Henderson just unfortunately cannot stay healthy. I mean, he gets banged up after 3 runs every game and has to come out for a few series. And Sony Michel's going to be a free agent, which I don't foresee them bringing back unless he comes back for like a vet minimum, which I think he can get a little bit more money elsewhere. So the Rams, it makes sense to just take a running back late in this thing. I don't see them doing it in the 3rd round. It'll probably be one of their later picks. But who are some running backs to watch at the combine that you like, and also maybe they're diversified, not just a downhill runner, but can do stuff in the passing game also?
So what I look for in a running back is ability to rush the football, obviously number one, ability to catch passes out of the backfield. blocking, size, and home run threat. And when I tell you that this guy legitimately has 4 of the 5, Rashad White from Arizona State, 6'2", 210-pound back, excellent patience, ran for over 1,000 yards last year, doesn't have a lot of tread on the tires. He had 187 carries to 225 of Jaden Daniels and Demontre Trainum, who's now transferred to Ohio State. His first year at Arizona State, 42 carries, 420 yards. I'll let you do the math on that. That is 10 yards a carry every time this guy touched the ball. He was a stud, to say the least. And you combine that with 43 catches. I mean, that's as much as you'll see from the running back position in a lot of programs. Pass catching, the home run threat. He had over 6 or 7 20-yard runs last year. Ability to rush the football in bulk. He has the body size where he can be the rare 3-down back. I mean, he just checks a lot of boxes for me. And for anyone questioning my Arizona State loyalty on this, yes, he did go to Arizona State, but Jamal Madney had him as well as the top running back that was a sleeper. So this is both of us agreeing on that. The other running back I look for is a guy that the Madman actually brought up. It's Dameon Pierce. And Pierce played well against top-level competition. Mike Renner, our friend from PFF, is very high on this guy moving forward. Averaged 5.7 yards a carry in the SEC, 13 touchdowns, 19 catches, 216 yards, 3 touchdowns. Bigger back, he's going to be the guy that 5'10", 215. He's built like an armored truck, so to speak. Mm-hmm. He's going to be tough to bring down. You add the pass catching element, goal line, ability there. I think Dameon Pierce would be a perfect back if you can get him in the 3rd or 4th round, if that is the lane you are looking for. So Dameon Pierce and Rashad White are my 2 running backs that I think could really help out any NFL team given the scheme.
Love that. Yeah, I like Rashad White a lot too, and Dameon Pierce for the Chargers, because I think that they'll go in those earlier rounds, which the Chargers have 11 picks. So they can kind of allocate one of those earlier picks. For me with the Rams, I think they would be a great fit. I just like the Rams taking, either O-line or linebacker with those early picks and going with maybe a Keonta Ingram in the later rounds, who I think could complement Cam Akers very well because they're a little similar but different style backs. And I think that'd be a better allocation of draft purpose. But I love those 2 guys you mentioned. And there's probably check the boxes for the Chargers, which we don't really need to talk about the running back position too much. We'll just transition that way. Are there any other backs you wanted to mention for the Chargers, or those are the 2 you're saying look for in general?
Those are the 2 that I think are very special and can make a lot of difference. Keonta Ingram is definitely up there. Those are the running backs that I feel have a chance to flourish in those 2 things. So don't want to, go on a limb and say guys that I haven't particularly scouted yet. But from the guys that I've scouted, those are the 2 guys that I really enjoy.
Of those 2, Will, with the Chargers, who do you think would complement Austin Eckler best?
I think Dameon Pierce. Perfect. Given that he's a bigger back, you get kind of thunder and lightning to Eckler, right? So glad I didn't say Eckler for Dan Wolf out there, because he would literally rip my nuts off if he got me saying that. But Dameon Pierce is the guy, man. I think he would be a perfect fit right next to an Eckler. Are you kidding me? Thunder and lightning. Yeah. And I know this is a big statement, but it could bring back a lot of, LA fans to that Bush, Lendale White kind of backing crew, because Eckler is the shiftiest back you'll find in the National Football League. Yep. Pierce is the bruiser that they need that has deceptive speed. Give me Dameon Pierce and Eckler. I think that's a phenomenal combination right there.
I mean, that's 100% what they need, because when you see a 4th and 1 on the 18-yard line against the Las Vegas Raiders and you run Eckler up the gut, would much rather see Pierce going up the gut in that situation if they are going to run in that. So I think that's a great fit. Right tackle is a need. Obviously, Brian Bulaga is still on the roster. I expect him to be a cut from this team just because he will free up over $10 million in cap space. And unfortunately, the guy just hasn't been able to stay healthy. You gave some good offensive line guys for the Rams. The Chargers, let's just do it so we do it a little differently. And I don't know how much you researched this, but I'm sure you know some of the top tier guys. If the Chargers go tackle at 17, if they were to use that pick like they used the 13 last year for Rashawn Slater, who do you like for the Chargers to take at the back end of the first round to solidify? And it could end up becoming one of the best offensive lines in football if they get it right.
There's 2 guys that come to mind when it comes to those top 2 offensive tackle positions, and it's Bernard Raymond from Central Michigan, one of the highest graded players PFF has, period. older guy, really started playing football later in life, came from Europe. He's only been playing tackle for 2 years. He started his career as tight end. He's a freak athlete, great footwork, great in the run blocking and great in the passing in terms of grade. Obviously, it's a bigger jump coming from the MAC to the NFL, but these PFF guys love him. They think he's a first-round talent. Another guy that, is getting a lot of buzz given the size and, ability that he has, Trevor Penny, the left tackle from Northern Iowa. Came to the Senior Bowl. He didn't, kind of strike me as a guy that I would want to take in the first round. PFF has him 31st overall on their offensive board. But it's just a guy that checks the boxes, looks the part, needs a little help on technique, but once he gets that down, should be a mauler in the run game specifically. So Trevor Penning and Bernard Raymond, if you are looking for a tackle at that end of the first round, those are the two guys that have come up consistently when doing mock drafts and things like that.
Yeah, I think that'd be slam dunks, and it'll depend, obviously, what the Chargers do. The biggest free agency thing for the Chargers right now is Mike Williams, right? Like, because if they bring Mike Williams back, then I think it would make the most sense to either go interior defensive line, which we'll get to in a second, or offensive tackle with that first round pick. If they don't re-sign Mike Williams, then it all of a sudden becomes, do they take a receiver at 17? So at the combine, Will, you can give a few names, you can give some top end receivers, but also even if they do sign Mike Williams, with one of those 11 picks, the Chargers are going to take at least one, maybe two other receivers because they need a burner. They need more depth. So even though it's not 17, they need other guys. So just give me in general some receivers because these are my favorite guys to watch at the combine. I played in high school, so I'm biased, but the drills are the most fun to watch when you're watching on TV. So who are just some receivers that Chargers fans should really watch at the combine, really pay attention to that could end up being bolts come end of April?
When it comes to, the Chargers in the receiving room, I like a Chris Olave that will be on the board there. Technician route running, didn't have to come back to Ohio State for his, third or final year, really balled out. A guy that Jamal and I were both very high on. Jamal had him ranked as the number 2 guy behind Drake London. Technician when it comes to the route running. And then if Garrett Wilson's available, I've heard the comp, and like we said, we compare players for what they could be potentially. Garrett Wilson looks like Stephon Diggs to a lot of people. So I think that's a really good one if the Chargers were looking there. When it comes to the defensive line, I actually prefer them go edge before they go a nose tackle because, yes, they need a nose tackle, but to use your first-round pick on a nose tackle, you're asking for more than your buck's worth in production. Yeah. So I know Jordan Davis is there. You got to give me 4 or 5 sacks at least from a nose tackle position, given the rate there. I will give you a defensive tackle I think they should take in the second round, and that's Travis Jones. 8.5 sacks in his career, 19 tackles for a loss. Was the MVP of the week for Senior Bowl. A guy that's going to be threatening the bench press record at the Combine this year. So Travis Jones from UConn, 6'4", 330-pound defensive tackle. Watch out for him all week. I'm really excited for him. And as for the edge rushing, I just noticed this personally. Bosa is one of the top 5 pass rushers. You break it down any which way within the league. They've struggled to find that second guy to get there, the Melvin Ingram, so to speak, to generate pass rush when it comes to the quarterback. There's going to be a ton of edge rushers at the top of this board. I've seen Travon Walker being mocked there from Mel Kiper, the 280-pound Georgia defensive end that has freak-like ability. You look at the stats and you go, man, 5 sacks? I mean, this is the guy that's going to the top. There's a play where he chases down Jamison Williams against Alabama as a 280-pound defensive end, gets him, wraps him up in the open field. That's hard to stop. And then the guy that I love, I don't know if he'll be there, a guy that actually transferred from Georgia, Jermaine Johnson. This dude checks every box for me. I love a pass rusher that throws multiple moves at you. He's throwing the spin move out at the Senior Bowl, was doing great things, had 12 sacks for Florida State this past year, 18 tackles for a loss, but he also had 70 tackles at 6'5", 262 pounds for Florida State. A guy that reads the run just as well as he does the pass. He's a complete defensive end player. Love him. And then there's George Karloftis from Purdue. I think that's a great guy as well. He led the Big Ten over the past 2 to 3 years in quarterback hits at 36. High motor player, 6'4", 275, runs like a gazelle. I'm excited to see his time. It's another guy you kind of got to throw out the sack totals because I think sacks in a way are a little overrated at times when you do represent an edge player. I think if you're looking at the pressure rate, he is tied with Aiden Hutchinson as the highest pressure rate in their careers in the Big Ten, at both at 24%. So that tells you the type of caliber player Karloftis is, with Hutchinson being mocked going first in a lot of drafts. So if you can get any of those guys on the edge, maybe I'd take a Travis Jones that high, maybe in the second round. But I'd go edge over defensive tackle. And for receiver, I like the Ohio State guys in Olave and Wilson.
Yeah. And so much hinging on that free agency. If they bring back Uchenna Nwosu on the edge, if they allocate a lot of money to him, will they go stack up edge in the first round, or do they go defensive line? At receiver, I love a guy like Christian Watson out of North Dakota State. They wouldn't take him at 17, but in that second round, or if they have to move up a little bit in that second round, I think he'd be a great fit because he brings something different to the table, similar to what like Olave would, as opposed to what they have in Keenan Allen and if Mike Williams is back. So many fun players to watch at the combine this week. Rams fans, you gotta dig a little deeper for some of these guys because you're not drafted until day 2. Chargers guys, though, you have a lot of fun options there in those top first and second rounds when it comes to a lot of positions. And tight end, like we mentioned, is a position of need, with Jared Cook being a free agent and Darnell Parham being a restricted free agent. Will Greg Dolcich be staying in LA with the Chargers? So we talked about him earlier. I think he'd be a lot of fun to watch and see what happens with him for the Chargers. Cornerback, another position of need, I think. After 1 and 2, Mike Davis and Asante Samuel Jr., who do they add in that? I think personally, I think they go and sign a big name free agent. I just think I don't know. I think that's what they're going to do. They're going to solidify the secondary. You have a big name free agent, add that to Mike Davis, Asante Samuel Jr., Derwin James, Nas Adderley, and in the draft, you can use to really fortify the rush defense and add to that receiving room, is how I kind of think they approach it. So
definitely. Yeah.
But
correct me if I'm wrong, they have among the most, if not the most, cap space available in the NFL this offseason.
Yes,
near the top if
3.
It's not number 1. Yeah.
It might be number 1. I've looked at it so much now. I'm overanalyzing it, but it's top 3 for sure. So they got, and if they release or cut Brian Bulaga, they go up even higher. It frees up even $10 million more than what they have. So
which they should. Bulaga was a massive bust, but I love the point you made about the tight end. You look in their division just as a whole. You've got 2 top 4 tight ends in football for my money, in Travis Kelce and Darren Waller. Why not just add another guy to that mix? It's a deep tight end class this year, whether it's Dolcich, Isaiah Likely, guys like that, Trey McBride. You can get a stud. You can get a day 1 starter from one of those 3 guys, whether it's the third round or later. Take a chance on one of those guys and, invest in the biggest asset you have in your franchise in Justin Herbert at the quarterback position.
Yeah, and they will be. Unless they go out and pay big money for, a David Njoku or one of those free agent tight ends. Those that didn't listen to my last episode, I think they go after OJ Howard for cheap, get him on the cheap, a guy that had, former first round pick that just hadn't panned out in Tampa, and you get him for under $3 million a year. Why not give him a shot? But I still think they draft a tight end with one of those picks to add to the arsenal. And man, I would love Greg Dolcich going from powder blue in UCLA to powder blue in LA Chargers. I think that's a great fit.
Dude, walking on, at UCLA to the Chargers with a top 3 or 4 round pick. Hollywood can write that story. So let's bring in the guy, man. He's the stud.
Let's make it happen. So my man, Will Decker, Bruin Bible. I believe you're dropping an episode later tonight. So everyone be on the lookout for that. Draft is in session with Will and Jamal. They do all things with us in LA football. So appreciate you, bro. We went longer than I planned, but thank you for giving us your insight to the combine this week. Should be a blast all week. I'm sure you'll have plenty of stuff going all week, as we all will at the LA Football Network. But thanks, my man. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate you.
Absolutely, dude. LA Football Network, like and subscribe. Let's get this out here. We are a brand that's going to be taking over LA soon with lots of big news coming. So keep hitting that subscribe button. We love y'all.
That's right. That is right. Couldn't be more excited about this offseason and heading into next year. Got tons of stuff coming up. So like and subscribe, follow us anywhere you get your podcasts. We are everywhere you listen. And like Will mentioned, on YouTube at LAFB Network. The website, LAFBnetwork.com, has all of our content, all of our podcasts, all of our shows. You can find me on Twitter at Ryan Dyrud LAFB, and Will is at Will LAFB Network. My man, appreciate you. All of you, thank you for listening. I'm your host, Ryan Dyrud. Peace.